back to the GOAT Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host again, Jim Neander. All right, welcome back to our Week 12 recap show. This is the second half of our recap show. Make sure you go back and check out yesterday's episode with the first half of the recap. We had my good friend Mike McNaughton, Mike Mack, on the show, helping me out. It was our first time having a guest host, and it was a lot of fun, so definitely go back and check out that episode. Also, make sure you find out about those first 7 matchups that we covered. But we're going to pick it up here because we want to get through this quick. We ran a little bit long in that episode. We got to rambling a little bit, and I want to keep this one just a little bit shorter than that when we can get ready for our Week 13 preview, because we know we have a big one coming up and a lot of games starting on Thursday with the Thanksgiving game. So I want to get to that. So let's go ahead and knock these games out, let you know what happened, give you a quick recap of all those games, and we're gonna go from there. So, all right, let's pick it back up with the Jets and the Raiders. This game was in New Jersey. The Jets were hosting the Raiders and absolutely smashed them, 34-3. Wasn't a game. The Raiders looked bad the entire game, just couldn't get it going. Derek Carr looked pretty helpless out there, honestly. So let's see here with the Raiders. You didn't really get much out of your guys if you played them. Unfortunately, Derek Carr only threw for 127, didn't throw any touchdowns, did throw an interception. So if you streamed him and thought you were streaming a good matchup against the Jets, you definitely missed on that one. Josh Jacobs just didn't get the work. They were behind too much. The game script worked against him all day. You were hoping to get some receptions, but you didn't. Only carried the ball 10 times for 34 yards. Caught 1 pass for 2 yards, and that's a killer. You like to think if you're down in the game, you're going to get some of those receptions. And one of the running backs did, and it was Jalen Richard. Caught the ball 6 times on 7 targets. He had 47 yards, and 3 or 4 of those going Josh Jacobs' way would have gone a long way to Josh Jacobs' owners. So it's a little bit disheartening that as soon as they need to throw the ball and they're behind in the game, here comes Jalen Richard. You need to hope that Josh Jacobs is a 3-down back, and it looks like they have to be closer in the game for him to be a 3-down back. Jalen Richard was the running back, I guess, to have in that game, although nobody did. For pass catching options, Hunter Renfrow did lead the receiving core in receptions. He tied for the team lead, for pass catchers with Hunter Renfrow had 3 receptions, 31 yards on 5 targets. Tyrell Williams had 6 targets, but only caught 2 balls for 18 yards. Tyrell Williams killed me in one league. That was kind of brutal. If you played Darren Waller, you've been used to some big games. It was a pretty disappointing one for him. 3 catches, 41 yards, 6 targets. Amazingly, that 3 for 41, that 7.1. In today's tight end days, it's not all that atrocious. At least you got more than a handful of points there in a PPR league, and just enough to keep you okay. So something to keep an eye on here. It looks like Hunter Renfrow is going to miss probably the rest of the season. He's down with an injury, and already depleted offense, and a offense that's struggling to move the ball and score is now missing one of its better weapons that's come up of late. So not looking good for the Oakland offense moving forward, but we'll see how they can do this upcoming week here. Let's go to the Jets here. They had a lot more going on. Sam Darnold had a really nice game. He's really been picking it up as of late, and he's going to be a very popular streaming play with their schedule coming up. So 315 yards in the air with 2 touchdowns, added another touchdown on the ground, 4 carries, 16 yards. But with 3 touchdowns, over 300 yards, big day for Sam Darnold. You had to be happy about that. If you're a Lev Bell owner, the receptions pulled you through again. Only ran the ball 12 times for 49 yards, but he did add 5 receptions for 59 yards, caught all 5 of his targets. Obviously, those 11 points, made his day pretty viable, and you're keeping Bell in there because, he's getting the volume, he's catching the ball out of the backfield, so he's still getting you those 15 points, but those big games just aren't there right now for Lev Bell, and you just got to expect, good, consistent, solid games out of him. But you're probably not going to get those 25-point outbursts at this point. It doesn't look like. So there you go. Let's see who's catching the ball out here in New York. Robbie Anderson had another nice game. So 4 catches on 5 targets, 86 yards and a touchdown. He's really come up in the last few weeks also. So as Sam Darnold's playing better, later in the season, similar to last year, Robbie Anderson is absolutely catching the ball more often. And I think he's going to be a playable asset, for the next few weeks. And a guy that really didn't have an impact in fantasy all year, other than hurting teams, is now going to be kind of an asset, going forward. So we'll see what happens there. You were disappointed with most of your other pass catchers. If you played Jamison Crowder, he only saw 4 targets, caught 2 balls for 18 yards. Demarius Thomas caught 2 balls for 22 yards. So not much going on there outside of Robbie Anderson and Lev Bell. If you played Ryan Griffin, who was a very popular pickup and play, he did get into the end zone, so you were fine there. Only caught 3 balls, was only targeted 3 times, but for just 13 yards. So really didn't do much of anything on the day, but did get into the end zone, and at the end of the day, that's all that matters. Got you that 10-plus points and was a tight end 1 on the week. So not the tight end 1, but, a tight end 1. All in all, big game for the Jets. You got some points there, and will be interesting to talk about them moving into Week 13 and beyond. All right, where are we going to go here? Let's go to Philadelphia, where the Eagles hosted the Seahawks. Couldn't get it done at home. Kind of an ugly game here. The Seahawks won the ball 17-9. There definitely were a few storylines, though, that we want to keep an eye on, particularly in the backfield for Seattle. Moving forward, should be, a little bit concerning if you're Chris Carson owners. So let's talk about the Seahawks day. Russell Wilson was kept very in check here. 13 of 25, which is, pretty inefficient for Russell Wilson. 200 yards, threw 1 touchdown, threw 1 interception, was sacked 6 times for 26 yards. Those 6 sacks hurts. The offensive line has got to do a better job of helping him. I know, they're on the road. Philly's got a really good front 7, but got to do a better job of that. So not a great game for Russell Wilson owners, but I think he's going to be fine moving into these next few weeks. All right, so the big thing here was the backfield. So Chris Carson fumbled the ball again a couple of times, I believe, on consecutive plays. And really, it wasn't just about that. So here, let's look at the numbers. Chris Carson ran the ball 8 times for 26 yards. He did have 4 receptions for 31 yards, so that helped out a little bit. But Rashad Penny ran the ball 14 times, 129 yards, and a touchdown. So big game for Rashad Penny, his first big game of the season. Broke off a 58-yard run and just looked fantastic for the first time all year. Really looked great. And that's got to really worry Chris Carson owners. Between the fumbles and how good Rashad Penny looked, it's just stressful. You know what I mean? You can't really feel great about that. So, moving forward, what's my confidence level in Chris Carson? You got to knock him down just a notch or two, just because you got to expect Rashad Penny to have a closer split, even if you expect Chris Carson to maintain the majority of the workload. Rashad Penny's going to get some more touches based on this performance and based on the fumbles. So, there you go, 14 for 129, man, and a touchdown. So, Chris Carson, you did not get what you needed. You didn't really get what you needed out of any of your pass catchers in Seattle. Tyler Lockett was only targeted twice coming off the injury. 1 catch for 38 yards. DK Metcalf, 3 of 6 for 35 yards. The touchdown that was passed was caught by Malik Turner, so that helped nobody. His only catch was that 33-yard touchdown. Jacob Hollister, a lot of people, myself included, picked up and streamed Jacob Hollister expecting big things. He was only targeted 4 times, 2 receptions, 22 yards. Unfortunately, Russell Wilson very uncharacteristically missed him on an easy touchdown pass, and that would have made Hollister's game a whole lot different. All of a sudden, you're talking about an 11-point game instead of a 4.2-point game. So that was kind of brutal to see if you played Hollister, but that is what it is. I do think Hollister is still going to be a good tight end option going forward, and expect him to be a tight end 1 the rest of the way. All right. Excuse me. All right, to Philly. Still battling this winter cough here. All right. Carson Wentz threw the ball 45 times, 33 completions, 256 yards with 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions. So another, lackluster game for Philadelphia. They did not score a lot of points in this game. They only scored 9 points, and just not looking good continuously week after week, having trouble getting it going. I know they're missing, a lot of their pass catching weapons. Alshon Jeffrey was out again, still missing Nelson Aguilar. Deshaun Jackson never materialized, so they are a little bit short-handed here. So it's tight end heavy as it has been the last few weeks. Let's talk about the running backs here. Miles Sanders, 12 carries, 63 yards in Jordan Howard's absence. Got involved a little bit in the passing game, 3 receptions on 5 targets, 23 yards. So all in all, not a great game, not a terrible game. You were okay with Miles Sanders' performance in this one. I'd like to see him look a little bit better. On some of those runs, he did average 5.3 yards a clip, but there are a couple of runs where I just thought trying to do a little bit too much, and sometimes you take what's there. Jay Ajayi did get in this game. He was just brought back to the Eagles here this last week. Carried the ball 6 times, got 16 yards, and obviously his first game back and just getting reacquainted with the ball back in his hands. He's not going to have much relevance going forward, assuming that Jordan Howard's not going to be out for too long. If Jordan Howard's out for another game or two, all I think is that Jay Ajayi cuts into Miles Sanders, ceiling just a little bit, as much as a bad offense already does. So, yeah. But yeah, Miles Sanders had an okay game. Pass catcher, Zach Ertz, ton of targets. 14 targets in this game, caught the ball 12 times, 91 yards, and a touchdown. So you got that beast game that you wanted out of Zach Ertz. If you're an Ertz owner, there you go. Dallas Goedert, not surprisingly, second on the team in targets. So was targeted 8 times, 7 receptions, 32 yards. So not a big game as far as yardage goes, but absolutely those 10 points put you in play on the tight end radar. So he continues to be an option at the tight end position. Who caught the ball here? Greg Ward Jr. was the leading wide receiver for the Philadelphia Eagles here. 7 targets, caught 6 balls for 40 yards. I don't have any interest going forward, but it is something to note and keep an eye on. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside caught 2 passes for 43 yards, so caught a nice 30-yard pass there. Was targeted 5 times. Not a very efficient game, but scored some points. They're going to struggle as long as Jeffrey's out and Aguilar's out. Just the pieces they're used to having. They got to get healthy, man. They're in the middle of a divisional battle, even though they're 5-6. I think they're only 1 game behind the Cowboys, and they got to get it together. They can still win this division. That's the only way they're going to the playoffs this year, is to win an ugly NFC East. So we'll see if they can do that, and we'll see who's healthy for next week. But there you go. For this week, it was ugly for the Eagles. Seattle got the win, but there were really no big winners in this game for fantasy. So, oh well, other than Zach Ertz. All right, moving along. Let's keep it rolling here. The Washington Redskins. Man, they hosted the Detroit Lions in another pretty ugly game. Ugly in real life, ugly in fantasy life, just kind of ugly all around. Jeff Driscoll, kind of a tough day here. He did have some rushing yards, so it helped you out with the baseline, but 207 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions, also was sacked 6 times. So kind of a rough day for Jeff Driscoll. I know he was a popular streaming option, and it didn't really work out for you the way you were hoping that it would. Ran the ball 9 times for 63 yards, so continues to get you enough points on the ground that, that some points are there. He didn't have, a great week by any means. Let's see where we can find out where he was on the week. If you played Bo Scarborough, you were fine with his performance, so you're happy to see that. That was, a big question mark for the week. So, yeah, where did Jeff Driscoll go? All right, he wound up with 15.6 points, and that put him at the quarterback 13. So just outside the QB1 range, and not really that bad of a week. So if you streamed him, he was still probably one of the top streaming options, outside of maybe, Ryan Tannehill, Ryan Fitzpatrick, both had really big weeks. Kyle Allen. So, there were better plays out there for sure for streamers. Mitch Trubisky, wow. All right, so I guess a lot of guys kind of overperformed, talking about the the streamers this week. All right, let's get back to Bo Scarborough here. So, 18 carries, 98 yards. He did get the workload as was expected. It was nice to see one of these Detroit Lions running backs finally take the reins a little bit. So he didn't get involved in the passing game, so that hurt a little bit. Only targeted once, didn't catch it. But 98 yards, good to see. If you started him, about 10 points, you were probably, okay with that. So that's what it was. J.D. McKissick, continues to be phased out as Scarborough has a little bit more success. McKissick only caught 2 balls for 17 yards, so at this point, scratch that. Don't play McKissick. Ty Johnson's off the radar for now. Bo Scarborough is the guy in Detroit. Let's talk about the receivers here. Marvin Jones targeted 11 times. Unfortunately, didn't translate into a big game. 5 receptions, 46 yards. So, again, you're okay with that, but not a great game. Kenny Golladay only targeted 4 times, in contrast, but caught all 4 of them for 61 yards. So a much more efficient game for Kenny Golladay, and kind of makes you wonder, hey, why aren't you throwing at Kenny Golladay more, Jeff Driscoll? I'd like to see that. I've got some tough decisions to make in Week 13 regarding Kenny Golladay, and I'm not really sure what to do, but we'll get to that on the preview show. So, if you played Golladay, you played Jones, you got just enough that you were okay, but you definitely weren't, excited or happy about it. Nobody else did anything really on the ball there as far as who to bring up. Danny Amendola, I'm sure some people played him. Didn't get the targets that you needed, only 3 targets. Caught all 3 for 21 yards, but Amendola's a volume PPR guy. You got to be getting those 8+ targets for him to really kind of have impact on your week. So, yep, didn't get it. All right, let's go over to Washington. Dwayne Haskins got his first W as a starter. It was ugly, but got it done. 13 of 29, 156 yards. No touchdowns, 1 interception. The only touchdown Washington scored was on a special teams return touchdown. So, yeah, not pretty for anybody here. Darius Geis and Adrian Peterson split the carries in the backfield, 10 carries each, 32 yards for Geis, 27 for Peterson. So, pretty ugly for both of them. Neither one got involved in the passing game. They both had 1 reception. 22 yards for Adrian Peterson, 6 yards for Darius Geis on two targets. And you were not happy with either of these guys. I'm not sure what you do going forward. I think Geis is going to be the play, but we'll have to dig into that a little bit more later in the week. Let's talk about the receivers here. Terry McLaurin. Well, this is actually a little bit of a step in the right direction. If you're a McLaurin owner, you're pretty happy with his performance. He was targeted 12 times. That's a big old number, and you love to see that, even with an inaccurate passer. He caught 5 balls for 72 yards, right around his projected points, a little bit over 12 points. And he is part of those big decisions. I mean, this same game, Golladay and McLaurin, talk about next week. This is a tough decision. Can you play Terry McLaurin now? Is he just getting enough volume and he's the clear number 1 that you still put him out there because the big play potential is there? That's an interesting one. There's nobody else out there you want to play. Kelvin Harmon, caught 3 balls for 43 yards, but he wasn't on anybody's radar and probably still won't be. Nobody else needs to be talked about. For Washington, it was pretty ugly other than that, but we're going to be talking about McLaurin for sure later in the week. All right, let's keep it rolling. All right, let's go to Tennessee, where the Tennessee Titans hosted the Jacksonville Jaguars and absolutely beat up on them in a game that Jacksonville needed to stay in the wild card hunt, and it just didn't happen for them. The Tennessee Titans had all the answers, that's for sure. So it was a tough one for Jacksonville, man. They did not look very good. Nick Foles, 272 yards passing on 48 attempts, so was throwing the ball quite a lot. Did not get the ball into the end zone in the air, and did not throw any interceptions, so at least there's that. But continues to struggle to find his way back in this offense, and you got to think, was it the right call to move away from Minshew and go to Foles? I know you gave him all that money, but got a shot at the playoffs. I think you got to go with the guy that got you there, but it's hard to do that. Nick Foles, we got to see a little more out of you, buddy. Leonard Fournette, 24 carries, 97 yards, continues to be the only running back getting carries in Jacksonville. Makes him super, super valuable. 2 touchdowns on the ground with those 97 yards. Added 9 receptions for 62 yards. So just a huge game for Leonard Fournette. Continues to get the work out of the backfield with 12 targets, led the team in targets, 24 carries, 9 receptions on 12 targets, man. That's 36 times the ball went your way in a game where you got, worked by the other team. So Leonard Fournette continues to be a top running back between just the volume and how well he's playing. It's really hard to make an argument to go away from Leonard Fournette in any way right now, but he continues to dominate, and that's pretty good. For the pass catchers on the Jacksonville side, Pt2 Westbrook, nice game for him. Tied for the lead in target share on the team for wide receivers with Chris Conley. He had 9 targets there, caught 8 of them for 69 yards. So really nice game. Again, they didn't get in the end zone through the air, so that's all you got out of Pt2. But you had to be really encouraged to get that 15-point game, to get the targets. And I think Pt2's going to be a good play for next week and into the fantasy playoffs. Chris Conley got 9 targets again, as I mentioned, 4 receptions, 49 yards. So, it wasn't a bad game, but could have done more with all that opportunity. DJ Chark, disappointing game for Chark owners. Only targeted 6 times, caught 5 balls for 38 yards. That doesn't do it for you. So, you see the tide turning a little bit here, maybe. Pt2 Westbrook had all of that rapport with Nick Foles to start the season. And then, he missed all that time. Chark became Minshew's favorite target. And now that Foles is back, it looks like might be going back to Pt2 Westbrook as the favorite target. We'll have to see if that trend continues, but I do believe it will. So there you go. Let's go over to the Tennessee side of the ball, where Ryan Tannehill had himself a big old day. Only 14 of 18 through the air, but 259 yards. 2 touchdowns, added 2 more touchdowns on the ground. 7 carries, 40 yards, 4 touchdowns on the day. If you played Ryan Tannehill, congratulations. You hit the streaming lottery and you nailed it this week. Derrick Henry, beast of a game. 19 carries, 159 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. Really big game for Henry. Continues to impress. He busted off a 74-yard run. Continues to make big plays happen throughout the season. And you're thrilled as a Derrick Henry owner. Didn't get involved in the passing game like he normally does. As he normally doesn't. 1 catch for 16 yards, but with that kind of work on the ground, you got everything that you needed out of Derrick Henry. Let's talk about pass catchers. A.J. Brown, big game for the rookie. 4 catches on 5 targets. $135 through the air. 1 touchdown, and he had a big game. Is he the receiving option to play, and is he someone that you can play every week? You'll have to find out on the preview show later in the week. I do think A.J. Brown is the man there. Nobody else really did anything for pass catchers. Corey Davis, 2 for 29. Adam Humphries, 3 for 20. Tight ends were not really involved in this game for either team. So that's what it was. Tennessee, I'm not sure if it's just, a matchup thing. They got the Colts next week on the road. And I don't know. Sneaky, man. You got to start being worried about Tennessee. They just look, really good, and their offense is really doing whatever they want. So it's scary. I mean, Tennessee Titans are one of the more valuable teams to have fantasy assets on going into the playoffs here, which is, pretty wild. So, all right, let's go. Let's go to New England. Oh man, this was a kind of a great, gritty, old style football game to watch. It was a cold and rainy day in Foxborough, and New England held on 13-9 against the Dallas Cowboys. So, in a 13-9 game, there's not going to be that many fantasy points scored, but let's wade through it and see how we did here. Dak Prescott had 212 yards in the air, did not get the ball in the end zone, 1 interception. So, if you had Dak, it was hard to sit him. He's been playing so well. With the weather and the matchup, sure you could have pivoted, but it was still hard not to have high expectations for Dak. Unfortunately, it didn't really happen in this game. Zeke Elliott did carry the ball 21 times. You expected a decent amount of carries with the weather. 86 yards, so a decent workmanlike game. 4.1 yards per carry. He did add 4 receptions for 40 yards, so, there you go. You got bumped up into that, 16.5 point range. So it was a fine week for Zeke Elliott, and you want to see those 20 carries. That's the kind of team they are. He really should be carrying the ball 20 plus times. So there you go. Well, everyone knows that Amari Cooper got goosed in this game. Stephon Gilmore continues to be probably the defensive player of the year at this point. So nothing for Amari Cooper, and that is brutal for Amari Cooper owners, and a really tough cornerback matchup coming next week on Thanksgiving Day against the Bills and Tre'Davious White. That is a tough matchup, man. White is a great corner, and I'll have a lot to say about Amari Cooper when we talk about that game, but that's a tough matchup after a tough one here. It's hard to know what to do with him. Randall Cobb led the way in targets. 7 targets, 4 catches, 86 yards. He's come on a lot, in the second half of the season so far, the second half of the fantasy season. And he's firmly on the radar, for flex. Running those underneath routes, he's getting open, he's making some big plays happen, and, kind of starting to look like the Randall Cobb of old a little bit. So, got to keep an eye on him. Michael Gallup, decent game, 4 catches on 6 targets, 55 yards. You weren't thrilled with the performance by any means, but it was a lot better than playing Amari Cooper. So, Jason Witten, 1 catch on 4 targets, 5 yards. Blake Jarwin actually had 4 targets of his own, caught 3 of them for 17 yards. I think both these guys have to be kind of off your radar for tight ends at this point. Jason Witten, there was a number of weeks there to start where he was getting those consistent points, where he needed those 7.5 points, and now he's not even getting that. So he's off for me. Tom Brady had a rough game, 17 for 37, 190 yards. 1 touchdown, though, so at least he got the 1 touchdown going, and that helped you just a little bit there, although it was a really tough game overall, obviously. But that's what it is, the weather. You got to play these games. You got to start looking at the weather this time of the year. It's going to be impacting these games. Sony Michel got back on the ball this game, 20 carries, 85 yards. You expected a heavier workload with the weather. So, the 85 yards and no touchdowns, not by any means a really good game. He did not get involved in the passing game at all. But if you're a Sony Michel owner, at least, you saw him out on the field all game, and it's good to see him have 20-plus carries again. I think he goes firmly back on my bench after this week, though. So, there you go. Julian Edelman had a big game. 8 receptions, 12 targets, 93 yards. So you got what you needed from Julian Edelman. The question was, who else could you play with Mohamed Sanu out and Philip Dorsett out? The question was, could you play Jacoby Myers? Could you play the rookie N'Keal Harry? Harry actually caught the touchdown. His only catch on the day, though, 10 yards, did get the touchdown. If you took a giant swing at N'Keal Harry, hey, got in the end zone. It wasn't that bad. Jacoby Myers did score more points, though. 9 targets for Jacoby Myers. That's something to keep an eye on as we monitor the Sanu and Dorsett injuries. 4 catches, 74 yards. So, yeah, I'm interested. Something to keep an eye on. Something else just to mention there, not that he did anything, and that's why I'm mentioning it, is James White. 2 carries, 5 yards, 1 reception, -6 yards on 3 targets. And, Burkhead got 5 targets, so that cut into you a little bit. And you just don't like to see that. James White owners, it's time to, probably keep him on your bench, maybe even get rid of him, but you got a lot of thinking to do if you're going to play James White, because he is not a big part of this game plan right now, and just can't trust him to get those 7-8 targets, every game like he was for a long time. Just can't expect it. So, all right, let's get to our 2 night games here. The San Francisco 49ers, man, the 10-1 San Francisco 49ers tied for the best record in the league with the New England Patriots. And boy, the Green Bay Packers came into town trying to show that they were one of the big boys also. And boy, did they get whooped 37-8. And boy, it didn't even seem that close on the day, man. Garoppolo had his way with the Green Bay Packers. The defense of the San Francisco 49ers continues to have their way with big quarterbacks and big-time offenses. Aaron Rodgers, 20 for 33, 104 yards. 104 yards. 1 touchdown. Man, that's brutal. when do you ever see Aaron Rodgers throw for 100 yards? That's like a quarter sometimes. And that's brutal. 5 sacks, 38 yards. No interceptions because, Rodgers doesn't throw a lot of picks, but another absolutely dominant, performance by the San Francisco defense. Very, very impressive. So a little bit of trouble here with the offense, obviously. Didn't get the ball running much at all. Split backfield again. Has to worry Aaron Jones. Owners, 13 carries for Jones, 11 for Jamal Williams. Neither one had a great game. Jamal Williams, a little bit better clip, 11 for 45. Jones was 13 for 38, so under 3 yards a carry, and that's not great. The thing is, Aaron Jones owners have been getting used to getting a lot of that work in, the receiving game, and didn't get it this game. It was all Jamal Williams. Aaron Jones only had 1 target. He didn't catch it. Jamal Williams had 8 targets, caught 7 of them for 35 yards. Man, that's 10.5 points. That, some of it could have gone Aaron Jones' way if you give me half of that. Instead of having 3.8 points out of Aaron Jones, now I've got 9.5 points. And, I'm not furious at the performance. But, without those receptions, this was really ugly for Aaron Jones owners. We'll talk about the matchup next week. But, again, another guy that, you're starting to sweat what the share is, and got to get those targets, got to get those receptions. Just didn't get them. Other than Jamal Williams, Devontae Adams was very heavily targeted. 12 targets on the day, but for 12 targets, man, you'd think, hey, you get 12 Aaron Rodgers targets, you're going to have yourself a big old game. Didn't happen that way. 7 for 43. Thankfully, he got into the end zone, I believe, for the first time this year. And that saved your day. You got 17, and a half points, whatever you got. But, not a great game. Thankfully, he got in the end zone. But you do love to see the 12 targets. Hopefully he's at 100% and you feel good. Nobody else on this team can you play as far as receivers. On any given week, Geronimo Allison, look at this. 3 catches for 9 yards. MVS, 1 catch, 7 yards. Jimmy Graham, 1 catch, 7 yards. Lazard, 1 catch, 7 yards. So, Aaron Rodgers likes to throw the ball 7 yards. So, there you go. All right, let's go to the team that actually scored some points, the San Francisco 49ers. Jimmy Garoppolo, 14 of 20, 253 yards, 2 touchdowns in the air, had a really nice game. Let's talk about the running backs here. A split backfield again, and Tevin Coleman, again, wasn't very good in this game. Thankfully, he got into the end zone for you. 11 carries, 39 yards, 1 touchdown on the ground. Didn't do much, catching the ball, 2 catches, 10 yards on 4 targets. So, Tevin Coleman owners have to be worried. I think you were expecting some bigger games. The running game looked so dominant for so many weeks in a row. And the last couple of weeks, even though the team has looked dominant, the rushing game really hasn't. Raheem Mostert, 6 carries. He made the most of his 45 yards and a touchdown. If you played Mostert, you were happy with what you got out of Mostert for sure. He also added 1 reception for 22 yards. So, you got 13, 14 points out of Mostert, and, you're kind of fine with that. Tevin Coleman, you got less points, and you weren't very happy. Let's talk about the pass catchers here. George Kittle, no surprise here, the number 1 weapon for the 49ers. The big question was, would he play? And if you held to your guns and you checked your constitution and you went ahead and you played George Kittle, you were very, very well rewarded with 6 catches on 6 targets, 129 yards, and a touchdown. Man, he continues to be the tight end that makes the most big plays down the field. Just such a dangerous weapon. It's pretty crazy what George Kittle does, man. I'm a believer. I mean, George Kittle is absolutely amazing, and he's definitely one of the top tight end talents in the league right now. Who else would you have played? You would have played Deebo Samuel possibly after a couple of really big weeks with a lot of targets. He was not targeted nearly as much this game, only targeted twice, but 2 receptions, 50 yards, and a big touchdown. So, hey, you got 13 points out of Deebo. You were pretty happy with that, especially considering you didn't get the targets. If you played Emmanuel Sanders, you were up a creek without a paddle. 1 target on the game. He caught it for 15 yards, but let me assure you that did not do it for you. Emmanuel Sanders monitors health. We'll talk about it on the preview show, but we'll see how he looks going into the all-important Week 13. All right, one more game to get to, and, well, one of these teams scored a lot of points. The other one didn't. Let's see. The Baltimore Ravens went on the road to Los Angeles to play the Rams and absolutely smoked 45-6, continuing to stake their claim as one of the top teams in the NFL and a legit Super Bowl contender. Lamar Jackson, legit MVP contender, just had another ridiculous game with a ridiculous stat line. Oh, he threw the ball 15 times, or he threw the ball 20 times. He completed 15 passes. 5 of them happened to land in the end zone. 5 touchdowns on 20 attempts. Really getting ridiculous at this point with Lamar Jackson. He probably could have scored a little bit more. I mean, he scored a touchdown on the first 6 drives they had. 1 rushing touchdown for Mark Ingram. Another great game for Ingram. 15 carries, 111 yards. The rushing game continues to be absolutely dominant. So 15 for 111 and a touchdown for Mark Ingram. 14 carries, 55 yards. So decent, clip for Gus Edwards. Justice Hill carried the ball 8 times for 27 yards. Oh, and of course Lamar Jackson. In case there wasn't enough rushing yards already, 8 rushes for 95 yards, just about 12 yards a clip. That is gross. So they ran the ball 45 times. Legit runs. It says 48, but that was RG3, taking 3 kneel downs there. So 45 rushing attempts to 23 passing attempts. So the defense knows you're going to run. They're lined up, knowing you're going to smack them in the mouth, and they just sit there and take it. And, man, does Baltimore like dishing it out. So that's just crazy. I mean, 285 rushing yards. If you take away the -3 for RG3, 288 rushing yards on the game in a game where he scored 6 touchdowns and threw 5 of them. That's wild. All right, let's talk about the pass catchers here for Baltimore. 5 touchdowns. Who got them? Marquise Hollywood Brown. 7 targets, 5 receptions, 42 yards, 2 touchdowns. Monster game for Hollywood Brown. At this point, he's a wide receiver 1, upside every week. And even though you could have those bust games, with the way this offense is playing, I want to have Marquise Brown in my lineup. Monster game for him. Rookie Miles Boykin didn't catch a touchdown, but 2 receptions for 54 yards, so showing that big playability. Just, foreshadowing a little bit for him. Willie Snead. Willie Snead caught 2 touchdowns in this game. So 2 receptions, 14 yards, and both of them were 7-yard touchdowns. Pretty solid, efficient game for Willie Snead. He's not on my radar as far as playing him, but hey, with this kind of an offense rolling, you got to think about playing anybody that's on that team. Mark Ingram. Oh, I kind of missed this. Mark Ingram caught another touchdown. So he got in the end zone twice. That was his only reception on the day, was a 7-yard touchdown reception. And huge game for Ingram. There you go. Buck 11 on the ground, and then 2 touchdowns. So huge game for Mark Ingram. Continues to have a beast game. Mark Andrews, a little disappointing for you. 2 receptions, 45 yards on 3 targets. Did have, I think, a big play called back at a certain point. And, hey, in a game where, there were so many points and so many touchdowns, yes, Mark Andrews owners, you had to be a little bit disappointed, but, at least you got, 6.5 points, and, it didn't kill your week probably. So there you go. Hey, I want everybody in that offense. I'm not scared off of playing Mark Andrews by any means. I want pretty much everybody that's in this offense. So there you go. All right, let's go to the Rams, who scored 6 measly points. Did not get in the end zone. Did not pass go. Did not collect $200. No, they were playing a home game in the NFL. They collected a lot more than $200, but I think you get my drift. Jared Goff, 212 yards in the air, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions, sacked twice. Just a terrible game and looked bad as he has for most of the year. This one was at home in a game they really needed to show they were still contenders and still could play with the big boys this year, and they pooped in their big boy pants, that's for sure. So, looked ugly. On the ground, looked ugly. They ran the ball 9 times. And really, one of those was, Jared Goff. So really, they ran the ball 8 times. Todd Gurley, 6 carries, 22 yards. What is going on here? 3 receptions for -3 yards for Todd Gurley. This is just not the same Rams offense. I don't know if, defenses just have all this tape on the McVay scheme at this point, but they are not making it happen. As far as pass catchers, at least you had a couple of viable games here. Robert Woods, unsure if he was going to play or be part of the game plan, was targeted 9 times, caught 6 balls for 97 yards, so by far and away the points leader on the Rams, so it was good to see him back. Robert Woods owners, I'm sure a large chunk of them probably benched him for this week. Didn't really get the reward of this good game, but at least it looks good going forward for Robert Woods. Cooper Kupp, targeted 10 times, caught 6 balls, 35 yards, so a rather disappointing game for Cooper Kupp. Didn't get to that 10-point mark, so, again, pretty disappointing, but at least it wasn't an awful game. It wasn't a 2-point game that killed you, like Brandon Cooks, who had 2 receptions for 32 yards on 4 targets. If you started him and you got those 5.2 points, that hurt a little bit more. Tight ends, this one hurt too. Gerald Everett, after a few big weeks of looking like a pretty big part of the offense, I guess, now that they have Woods, Kupp, and Cooks all on the field, it might be time to get rid of Gerald Everett. Maybe it was just a play that was viable while, Cooks was out with a concussion, Woods wasn't getting the targets, so Everett was a decent play. But he's only targeted twice, 2 catches, 23 yards. Tyler Higbee, actually, was targeted 6 times, caught the ball 5 times for 20 yards. And, as a Gerald Everett owner who got 4.3 points, heck, if you would have given me 3 of those catches for 12 yards, another 4.2 points, I'd have felt great. I'd have doubled up. I'd have been happy with 8.5 points. So what are you doing to me? Tyler Higbee, what are you doing to me? Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. That's going to do it for us. Listen, I told you I wanted to keep it short and sweet. Like I said, we went pretty well over in our episode yesterday with the first half of our recap, so wanted to get this one knocked out in a good amount of time, and I hope that we did. So, listen, we got a bunch of Thursday football, Thanksgiving, we got the holiday coming up. I'm going to try to get you that episode, that preview episode, so you know who to play in those Thanksgiving games. I'm trying to get to you as soon as I can. Look for it on Wednesday night, and hopefully we can get it out to you. So Thursday morning you can tune in and you can find out who you want to play in those Thursdays games, because let me tell you, what's coming up this week? Week 13 for most fantasy leagues. It's the final week before the playoffs start, baby. And oh man, are you on the bubble? Are you right there? Have you clinched? Are you out? Are you in? Man, I want to know. So go ahead and tweet the show. Find us on Twitter. It's at GOATFF Podcast. Again, that's at GOATFF Podcast. Or you can tweet me at Jim Neander if you prefer to tweet me personally. One and the same though. So go ahead and let me know if you need some help with your start sits. I'm always glad to help out. That's what I am here for. And thanks for joining us for another episode of the GOAT Fantasy Football Podcast. I had a good time today and look forward to getting with you before Turkey Day. And man, I am freaking pumped for week 13. So we will see you then.